Hello, today I thought we'd take a look how I created this masculine style desk calendar using the ScanNCut DX and the paper piercing kit. So to complete this project you'll just need some cardstock and glue, some foam pads or craft foam and a calendar tab. I'm a UK crafter, so I'll be talking about UK craft or stationery shops. I bought these from the Works. They're very inexpensive. They were 4 for just £1. I guess you can also find them in Ryman's or WH Smith's, and I don't think they'll be too expensive there either. Okay, so I've used less than two 12 by 12 sheets of cards to complete my projects, and the cardstock I'm using comes from Makers Superstore. They're a fairly new company here in the UK, and they sent me some cardstock to test for them. The cardstock cuts and pierces like an absolute dream. I didn't have any trouble. It's a very high quality premium cardstock. They sell two finishes. They sell a pearlescent finish in 300 GSM and a smooth finish which is 260 GSM. And the colours I've used here, on the Makers Superstore they call this outer colour brown, but it's really more of a bronze. I know it looks quite gold on camera, but it is more of a bronze. And this inner colour is oyster. Okay, so the bones of the project is just a 5x7 card base, and I've cut that on the ScanNCut, and I have a large outer mat in the same colour as the card base, so hopefully you can see that on camera. I have an inner mat with my paper pierce pattern on, and a small mat for my calendar tab to sit on, which I've just raised with some foam pads, or you can use craft foam just to give it a little bit of dimension. Now on the inside I've used the large mat file again just to create an insert, and I've added a paper pierced border all around, and I'll show you how to do that on the machine. It's really simple. The paper piercing design you see here comes from an additional activation card. So this is also available from Makers Superstore. It's also inexpensive. It's £20, and it contains 30 additional extra paper piercing designs. So if you like paper piercing, I think you'll like the designs on this activation card. Have a look first before you purchase to see what's included, but I thought there were some absolutely stunning designs on this card when I've worked my way through, so it's definitely something worth having a look at. And the reason I've chosen that particular pattern is that it fits perfectly in the size of my project. Now unfortunately the patterns in the brother kit and on the activation card cannot be resized. You can resize your own paper piercing patterns that you create, but the ones that come in the brother kit and on the activation card, as I said, cannot be resized. So I've used something, I've had a look through the card and the kit, and I've chosen a pattern I liked that fitted in with the size of my project. Okay, so we're going to go to the machine and I'm going to show you how I put these elements together. So in the previous video, which I will link to, I taught you how to create a card blank. I'm not going to go through how to do that again at the moment, so if you don't know how to do that, I highly recommend watching the video, and you'll need to create a card base which is 5 by 7 inches as a finished size. Save that to your machine and have that all ready to cut. So now we're going to create our mats and layers. So we're going to go into pattern and basic shapes and just choose this rectangle in the 3rd row. Now I'm too lazy to work out measurements for my mats and layers, and the machine has a far better mathematical brain than I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this rectangle to 5 by 7 and use the offset function to create my mats and layers. So we're going to turn aspect ratio off, change our height to 5 inches, and our width to 7 inches. And say set. So this rectangle now represents the front of our card, and we need to create our mats and layers. So we tap on the rectangle to select it, and we're going to go to edit, object edit, and create an offset. So if you tap this icon here, we want to create an inwards offset because obviously we want our first mat to be smaller than our card front. So if you keep hitting the minus button, once you start going into the minus figures, this is an inwards offset. So my inwards offset is 0.20 inches. And you say OK. So now you see we have our first mat and layer. Now our outer rectangle is still selected, and as I said, that just represents the front of our card. We don't need that any longer, so we're just going to delete that off the screen. Okay, and there's our first mat and layer. So now we need another mat and layer for our paper pierce pattern to sit on. So we're going to do the same thing. Object edit, offset, and we're going to create another inwards offset of 0.20 inches. And say OK. So now we have 2 rectangles on our mat, and this is our smaller rectangle which we're going to add our paper pierce pattern to. So I've sent my paper pierce pattern over from Canvas Workspace and saved it onto my machine. So I'm just going to recall that. So I'm going to hit OK, OK, add, retrieve data, and the pattern is in my machine's memory. And there's my pattern. So I select that and say OK. So now I have the pattern on my mat. So I want to align these two together. So I'm going to go to edit, and this icon here, you'll see you select multiple shapes. It has multiple red boxes, so hit that, select part of the mat, and just drag up until you just have your paper pierce pattern and your smaller rectangle selected. Say OK, OK again. Now we want to align these, so we're going to go to this compass section here, align, and we're going to align them centrally vertically and centrally horizontally, and say OK. OK again, object edit, and we want to group these two together, which is this icon here, and say OK. So with the paper piercing, your machine will know that you pierce this first and then it will cut out this rectangle. Okay, so as you can see, that will fit perfectly on our outer mat. So the next job we need to do is to create a mat for our calendar tab to sit on. Now I've measured my calendar, and it measures 3.15 inches wide by 2.21 inches high. So we're going to go OK, and we're going to add another rectangle onto the mat. So pattern, basic shapes, and I'm just going to choose the same rectangle. So I'm going to turn aspect ratio off again and reduce the size to 2.21 inches high by 3.15 inches wide. Okay, and this represents my calendar tab. Now obviously I need to make this bigger in this case, so it becomes a mat for my calendar tab to sit on. So making sure it's selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Object Edit, Offset again, and this time I'm going to create an outwards offset. So we're going to do that by hitting the plus button and staying in the positive figures until we reach an offset of 0.20 inches and say set and OK. And again, our original rectangle is selected and we no longer need that because that's just the size of our calendar tab, so we're going to delete that off the screen. Okay, so now we have the mats which our calendar tab will sit on. So now we just need to create our insert, and our insert is the same size as our outer mat. So we're going to duplicate this outer mat here. We're going to go to Object Edit, Duplicate, and just increase the number to 2 and say OK. So I'll just drag one of them out of the way. So now we're going to create another offset because we're going to create our paper pierced border. So I created my offset. I've made a smaller offset this time for the paper pierced border of an inwards offset of minus 0.12 inches, which is about 3 millimeters. So you're just going to hit OK and OK again. So now we need to select this inner rectangle to turn it into a paper pierce line. So we're just going to toggle through our shapes until we have the inner rectangle selected, and it's now selected. So we're going to go to Object Edit and Pierce. Turn our dot line on. Now dot spacing is how far apart your paper piercing dots are. I'm just going to leave that at the default for now and say OK and OK again. So if I zoom into 400% and have a look, you'll see I have my outer rectangle with my pierced border very close to the edge. So say OK. Now we want to group our rectangle and our paper pierced border together. So I'm just going to make sure this section is selected. I'm going to go to select part of the mat and just drag the arrow up until I have just these two objects selected. OK, OK, Object Edit and Group. And again the machine will know to pierce and then cut. Okay, so now we have all the elements of our calendar front. Okay, so you'll have your card base already created and saved on your machine, and now we're going to save this to our machine. So we're going to say OK, OK again, and save to your machine. And the machine will tell you includes the group pattern on the mat, cannot ungroup once you have saved the pattern. And that's fine. We're going to say OK because what we've done will work. OK, includes the pattern converted to dot line on the mat, cannot reconvert the pattern once you save the pattern, and that's fine. We wanted to create a dot pattern and we're not going to have to undo it, so we're going to say OK again. So now we have the completed calendar file saved to our machine. So we're going to first of all cut out our card blank. So if you load up whatever card you're going to use just onto your standard tack mat, not your paper piercing mat, just your standard tack mat, and recall the card base, retrieve data, machine's memory and your file, and say OK. You're going to cut out your card base first, okay? So after that, you're going to retrieve the calendar file that we've just made. So again, retrieve data, your machine's memory and the calendar file. So load up some more cardstock onto your standard mat, and we're going to just delete off the paper pierced elements because obviously we will need to use a paper piercing mat for that. So to do that, edit, select the shape you want to delete and hit the bin icon. Okay, so now we're just left with our outer mat and our calendar mat. So say OK, OK again, and then you're going to cut these out in whatever cardstock you like. And I again use the 300 GSM for my mats. Okay, so the last thing you're going to do is press your home button again, retrieve the file. So you'll be retrieving your calendar file, and this time you're going to delete your outer mats off. So you will just go edit, delete and delete again, just leaving your pierced elements on your mat. So you'll load up your 260 GSM cardstock or whatever cardstock you're using onto your paper piercing mat. Load your piercing tool into the holder. I've used the 0.8mm needle for my project, although if you want a more detailed look, feel free to use the 0.4mm needle if you like. So always pierce first. So you'll go OK, OK, select, hit the arrow to scroll down and then pierce. There are no settings to worry about. So you'll just load your mat, pierce and go. So once the piercing has finished, you then remove the needle tool and put your standard blade into the carriage holder. Leave everything where it is on the mat, and you're just going to cut. So you will just say OK, select and then cut, and your machine will just cut round your pieced elements, and then you just glue everything together. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to send me a message or leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel because I will have more videos and projects coming up in the future. And I also have some extra information on various projects and different things on my blog, ScanNCutUK.com. Okay, so that's all for now, and thanks for watching.